Okay, so after the Precambrian eon, we have the Paleozoic era. And there's two articles, this article and this one down here, or an extension of that we're going to cover the main ideas and some details about. So the Paleozoic era represents the geologic time from 251 to 540 million years ago. And I've highlighted that down here for you. And you can see there's some visuals here, some pictures that can help you to remember what animals developed or came about during that time period, okay? So the Paleozoic was a time of widespread geologic climate and biological change. The beginning of the Paleozoic is sometimes referred to as the age of invertebrates, as several new and important animal species began to appear in the ocean fossil record. Now, if you remember in the Precambrian time, there weren't a lot of fossils because they didn't have like bones. Invertebrates have hard shells or bones, and so that structure stays in place in the rock. It doesn't disintegrate like the rest, like of an animal, like a jellyfish doesn't have any of that, then there's not going to be an imprint left on the fossil. So the scientists have a lot more information about this era because the animals were invertebrates, okay? So here's an example of one, this trilobite, and that's kind of like an image of it, but it had a very hard shell. And because of that, it says, one such creature, the trilobite, became the world's dominant species for the first part of the Paleozoic. So many scientists believe that trilobite's hard exoskeleton helped them become so successful. Exo means outside. So outside they had a skeleton. The inside, they're all mushy. As the Paleozoic era continued, more and more species began to appear. Fish, arthropods, amphibians, and reptiles all developed during the Paleozoic. Now remember, this is over millions of years. It wasn't like this happened one day and the next day we had fish. It was over millions of years. So we also would get these plants. Primitive, again, means not well developed. That's why they don't look like the trees that we have now. They just have a few little branches going off. So they're very simple. Primitive means simple. Many of the species during the Paleozoic era developed in the oceans, however, eventually transitioned into land. That includes the trees. By the late Paleozoic, the land was dominated by various forms of organisms. Great forests of primitive plants covered the continents, and towards the end of the era, large reptiles were dominant, and some of the first modern plants appeared. Now, just like in the other, at the end of the eon, remember there was like some sort of event that killed everything? The same thing happens at the end of the Paleozoic era, that there is an event that caused mass extinction or killed everything, okay? So that's basically the information about the Paleozoic era. Over here, I put some key details for you, main ideas and key details. So if you need to answer any questions, then you can use that. And then also it will help you with your project, helping you to identify what are some of the main parts of this era. So some of the main parts, main ideas, it tells you the time period, 251 to 540 million years ago. It's the age of invertebrates. That's with bones, right? So you can have bones on the outside, like an exoskeleton, or maybe elsewhere in the body, like a fish. This tells you about the trilobite. There, fish and reptiles appeared, and many species started in the water but ended up on land during this time. And then there was a mass extinction. So these are all things that you should remember about the Paleozoic era. Now this portion of the article basically restates that same main idea, that there were vertebrates that grew or appeared during this time period, and how The land was covered with shallow seas, and that eventually the animals that were in the water made it onto land. So there was even a lungfish that came out of it that had fins that allowed them to move across the land. So it goes a little more detail about how the fish turned into like these amphibians that live on land and breathe air, but they have to return to water. Just kind of like the process of like going from amphibians to eventually being reptiles that do not need water anymore. So there's this transition here that you need to be aware of. So just remember this process. And then again, it talks a little bit about the mass extinctions of many land and sea animals. And the reason why they think this happened was because all the continental plates came together to form a single landmass, and then the glaciers formed. So they're thinking that maybe when the glaciers formed, that it killed everything off. They also mention that there are different periods within an era, and they list some of these. There are like 7 of them. I'm not sure if you're going to need to know all 7 of them. But this article, if you need to put that information into your project, will supply you with the list of the 7 different periods during the Paleozoic era. So return back to this article to find that information if you need it. All right, I hope this has helped you understand this article a little bit better and about the Paleozoic era.